Page Tunes read. From the pages of Page Tunes Magazine Monthly No. 4, April 2024. Story and artwork by Michael Zigerlig.
Frankenstein. Resurrection. Deep within the heart of a secluded mountain range, our facility lay concealed, a large complex of laboratories. I, Dr. Obadiah Romero, a man driven by an unyielding desire for knowledge and scientific progress, stood at its helm, surrounded by a team of intrepid scientists who shared my fervor for pushing the boundaries of exploration. The structure itself was a marvel of engineering, its architecture seamlessly melding with the natural contours of the colossal mountain cave that housed it. Massive stone pillars rose high, supporting the weight above, while intricate networks of pipes and wires snaked along the walls, pulsating with the energy of the experiments conducted within. Among my esteemed colleagues were Dr. Maria Sanchez, a brilliant geneticist with a keen eye for detail and a steadfast determination to unravel the mysteries of life itself. Dr. Jonathan Lee, a prodigious physicist whose innovative theories often bordered on the edge of madness, yet held the promise of unlocking the secrets of the universe. Dr. Michael Reynolds, a seasoned biochemist whose grizzled appearance belied a keen intellect and a willingness to do whatever it took to achieve his goals. And Dr. Elizabeth Miller, a renowned neuroscientist whose expertise in the intricacies of the human brain made her an invaluable asset to the team. As we toiled tirelessly to bring our goal to fruition, our focus was singular: to resurrect the remains of the infamous Frankenstein monster, its frozen tomb unearthed from the depths of the Arctic Circle where it met its tragic end. Despite warnings from historical accounts, we, in our endless hubris, believed we could control the outcome and harness the power of life and death. Accompanying us was a security detail led by a hardened veteran, Captain Mitchell. Tall and imposing, with a weathered face that spoke of countless battles fought and won, Mitchell exuded an air of caution bordering on paranoia. Despite his reservations, he remained steadfast in his duty to protect us and ensure the success of our mission. But despite the isolation of our mountain laboratory, we began to notice strange occurrences. Items such as ropes, torchlights, and even scientific equipment inexplicably vanished without a trace. It was a puzzling mystery, for our facility was located in the remote heart of the mountains, far removed from any semblance of human civilization. The disappearance of these items raised unsettling questions about the true nature of our surroundings. But we continued on undeterred. Sanchez meticulously inspected the genetic composition of the creature's limbs, while Lee, with furrowed brows, adjusted the intricate machinery that would bring our creation to life. Reynolds, his weathered hands deftly maneuvering through the maze of wires, ensured that every circuit was connected with precision. And Miller, her eyes fixed on the monitors displaying vital signs, monitored the body's readiness for awakening. Using a blend of state-of-the-art technology and insights gleaned from the late Swiss scientist Dr. Victor Frankenstein's own writings, we pieced together the body of the monster. With each bolt tightened and each circuit connected, we came closer to the day of the re-resurrection of the creature originally created by Frankenstein. We stood on the precipice of a monumental breakthrough, one that could redefine the very fabric of existence, of our understanding of life itself. Yet, beneath the veneer of excitement lay a gnawing uncertainty, a nagging doubt that whispered of the potential consequences of our actions. Captain Mitchell and his men, our steadfast guardians, paced the perimeter of the laboratory, their watchful eyes scanning for any signs of danger. Their presence was a reminder of the risks we faced, a stark contrast to the fevered determination that drove us forward. And then, as the final preparations were made and the moment of truth drew near, a hushed silence fell over the laboratory. With bated breath and trembling hands, we stood on the threshold of history, ready to reawaken Frankenstein's creation. As the last bolt was tightened and the final circuit connected, a surge of electricity illuminated the chamber in a blinding flash. The dormant form lying on the operating table jolted to life. Limbs twitched with newfound vitality, muscles tensing and flexing. The creature's eyes, once dull and lifeless, now flickered open, revealing a gaze that pierced the very depths of our souls. In that instant, time seemed to stand still as we beheld the monstrosity in all its glory. Its features, stitched together from disparate parts, bore the scars of its unnatural birth. As it rose from the table, its movement slow and deliberate, came a sobering realization. We had unleashed upon the world a force unlike any other. With a grumble that reverberated through the chamber, the Frankenstein monster took its first tentative steps. Its massive frame, cobbled together from various body parts, pressed against the metal restraints that bound it. The creature's eyes, filled with confusion and a burning resentment towards its recreators, scanned the laboratory. In the flickering light, the monster's gaze fell upon the scientists and security detail gathered in the lab. The monster's chest heaved with ragged breaths as it struggled against the chains that held it captive, its muscles bulging with raw power. Suddenly, with a primal scream that echoed off the walls, the monster summoned all its strength and broke free from its restraints. Chains snapped like twigs under its immense force, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. With each thunderous step, the monster's fury grew, fueled by the injustice of its creation and the agony of its existence. It bellowed its defiance to the heavens, the sound echoing like a war cry as it smashed through equipment and flung aside anything in its path. Glass shattered, sparks flew, and the acrid scent of burning chemicals filled the air as the monster rampaged through the laboratory. It paid no heed to the chaos it left in its wake, driven by a singular purpose: to exact vengeance upon those who had brought it back into this world. Amidst the pandemonium that engulfed the laboratory, Captain Mitchell, our stalwart guardian, swiftly rallied his security detail to action. With nerves of steel and unwavering determination, they brandished their weapons and unleashed a hail of bullets at the rampaging monster. To our horror, while the bullets did strike the creature, they seemed to have no effect, merely embedding themselves in its thick hide without causing any harm. Undeterred by its resilience, Mitchell and his team stood their ground, ready to defend us at all costs. But their valiant efforts were in vain, for the behemoth, fueled by primal rage, charged towards them with terrifying speed. With a thunderous roar, it seized one of Mitchell's men in its massive grasp, lifting him into the air. As we looked on in horror, powerless to intervene, the towering menace proceeded to crush the unfortunate security guard with a sickening crunch. His lifeless body fell to the ground in a pool of blood, a grim testament to the ferocity of our adversary. Mitchell and his remaining team members continued to stand their ground, their resolve unshaken even in the face of certain death. But their bravery was met with a cruel fate, as the creatures swiftly dispatched them one by one, each falling victim to its merciless onslaught. In a scene of carnage and devastation, the laboratory floor was littered with lifeless bodies. As we watched in horror, unable to tear our eyes away from the gruesome spectacle unfolding before us, it tore Mitchell himself into two parts with a sickening crunch. Blood sprayed across the laboratory floor, staining it crimson as the lifeless halves of him fell to the ground with a sickening thud. In that moment, the full weight of our folly crashed down upon us. We had unleashed a force beyond our control, a monster driven by primal rage and fueled by a deep-seated resentment. Fear gripped our hearts, and we fled from the laboratory, desperate to escape the monstrous creature that now stalked the halls. Sanchez, Lee, Miller, and I raced towards the control room, our footsteps echoing off the walls as we scrambled to activate the lockdown function. As we reached the control panel, our fingers flew across the buttons, activating the massive metal doors that would seal it inside. For a moment, Relief washed over us as we watched the doors slide shut, trapping the monster within. But our respite was short-lived. The monster slammed into the metal doors, its massive strength evident as it began to pound against the unyielding barrier. Panic surged through us as we realized that the giant was far more relentless and powerful than we had ever anticipated. Before we could react, the metal doors began to buckle and warp under the force of its onslaught. With each thunderous blow, our hope dwindled, replaced by a growing sense of dread. And then, with a final ear-splitting crash, the doors gave way, torn asunder by the sheer force of the monster's fury. In an instant, our sanctuary was breached. Lee was the first to fall. With a sickening thud, the creature's massive fist pummeled him into the ground, leaving him crumpled and lifeless. Sanchez, her screams piercing the air, tried to flee, but it was too fast. It lunged forward, its massive hands closing around her throat. With a final gasp, she fell to the ground, her life snuffed out in an instant. And then, as Miller and I watched in horror, helpless to save our colleagues, its attention turning towards us. With a predatory gleam in its eyes, it advanced, its every movement filled with an unholy hunger for destruction. In that moment, as the creature closed in on us, I knew that our only hope lay in reaching the next room and activating the lockdown function once more. But as we turned to flee, our path blocked by the carnage that lay before us, I realized that our chances of survival were slim. Amidst the chaos of the Frankenstein monster's rampage, a sudden and unexpected disruption shattered our laboratory. With a deafening crash, a massive white figure burst through the ceiling, sending shock waves of surprise rippling through the room. Dust and debris filled the air. Emerging from the wreckage stood another monstrosity of immense size, its fur as wide as the snow-capped peaks from which it hailed. We couldn't believe our eyes. It was a Yeti, a mythical being of legend, standing before us in all its majestic glory. Its massive frame draped in a coat of pristine white pelt. Piercing blue eyes gleamed with intelligence and ferocity. Long, powerful limbs ended in formidable claws, but despite its imposing stature, there was a sense of ancient wisdom in its gaze, hinting at a lineage steeped in mystery. Around its torso, the Yeti carried one of our climbing ropes that had disappeared. Miller and I exchanged a glance and couldn't resist a quick smile. This was the thief behind the disappearances of our equipment. The moment the Frankenstein monster laid eyes on the Yeti, confusion flickered across its visage. The two giants regarded each other with a mixture of curiosity and wariness, their massive forms tense with anticipation, like titans preparing for battle. Then, without warning, the tension erupted into violence. With a deafening roar, the Frankenstein monster lunged at the Yeti, its massive fists swinging with lethal force. The Yeti, undaunted by the sudden assault, met the monster head-on, its claws slashing through the air with terrifying speed. The laboratory trembled as the two behemoths clashed, their ferocious blows sending shockwaves of destruction rippling through the complex. Miller and I were barely able to dodge the flying debris and shrapnel, our hearts pounding in our chests as we sought refuge from the chaos unfolding around us. The room became a battleground, the Frankenstein monster and the Yeti locked in a savage struggle for dominance. Each blow reverberated through the walls, threatening to bring the entire facility crashing down around us. The violence escalated, the creatures unleashing their full fury upon each other with unchecked brutality. It was a sight both awe-inspiring and terrifying, the clash of these two titans echoing through the corridors like thunder on a stormy night. For what felt like an eternity, the battle raged on, each of the two refusing to yield to the other. And as Miller and I watched from the safety of cover, I couldn't help but marvel at the sheer power and savagery on display. They clashed with unbridled ferocity. Blow after blow reverberated, shaking the very foundations of the structure. In a moment of brutal retaliation, the Frankenstein monster managed to tear apart one of the Yeti's massive arms, sending a roar of pain echoing through the room. Infuriated and driven by primal instinct, the Yeti unleashed its full fury upon its opponent, its claws slashing through the air. With a terrifying display of strength, the Yeti seized the head of his combatant in a vice-like grip, its claws tearing into the monster's flesh. In a desperate bid, the Frankenstein monster fought back, its hands locking around the Yeti's neck. As the battle reached its climax, a gruesome struggle ensued. The Yeti, consumed by pain and rage, began to tear away at the Frankenstein monster's face with its sharp claws through flesh and bone in a frenzy of bloodlust. The Frankenstein monster tightened its grip around the Yeti's neck. Both titans, locked in a deadly embrace, were slowly succumbing to the injuries inflicted upon them. As they fought with all their remaining strength, their movements grew weaker, their struggles becoming more feeble with each passing moment. And then, in a final, agonizing moment of clarity, the battle came to an end. With one last shudder, both the Frankenstein monster and the Yeti succumbed to their wounds, their lifeless bodies collapsing to the floor in a tangle of limbs and gore.
If you've been captivated by the magic of this audiobook, here's how you can immerse yourself even further and support the creation of more enthralling tales for your enjoyment. Unlock the ultimate listening journey with a yearly subscription on pagetunes.com. No interruptions, ad-free, and exclusive access to the full library of audiobooks and ebooks. Download and enjoy captivating stories offline, anytime, anywhere. Whether through subscription or individual purchases, you play a vital role in bringing more enchanting stories to life. Explore the merch store. From cozy hoodies to stylish mugs and much more, every purchase directly contributes to crafting more thrilling tales for your pleasure. Thank you and happy listening.